Hey Scott, how you doing?
John, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, good morning.
Yeah,
What
good
what
morning to
time is
me, afternoon to
what,
you.
what is it? 8 o'clock over there where you are?
No, we're at 9 o'clock.
9 o'clock.
I
Okay,
think
cool.
you have changed time a day or two before us. We are changing over the weekend.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Yes, we are. We changed last weekend, so it's we're fully into winter here, or it feels like it anyway.
Yeah, it where I am currently in the US, I'm down in Charleston, South Carolina at the moment, and it changed very quickly on us. It went from being pretty warm to pretty cool fast. So I'm not complaining. I was sort of tired of summer.
Good, good.
Going up. Hey, why do you guys change time in the UK? What is the reasoning for you guys to do so?
Oh,
Ours
that's
was
a very
always originally based in farming, was my understanding.
yeah. I think that's the sort of basis of it here. It was originally to do with that. And I suppose in more recent times, there's also been an argument about be able to get the kids to school when when it's almost light and back home again in the fading daylight. So
Hmm.
that's probably a more appropriate argument. But there's always discussion every year. Do we need to do it? Is this just an old-fashioned thing that we maintain? But it doesn't really make a lot of difference. I think, to be perfectly honest, it's just tradition.
I think it
That's
messes up my
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 opinion.
my rhythm for the first week,
Yeah,
and I'd
yeah.
prefer not to do it, which is really weird in the US. Arizona, Hawaii, and Alaska, I believe, are the only three states that do not recognize it.
Oh,
And
right.
so
Okay.
I'll speak with Ruben, who is our president. We have a NAHFTA meeting after this, and I'll speak with him and ask him what it is like to suddenly be an hour off of everybody else every single
Yeah,
year for 6 months out of the year, which is baffling to me. But anyhow,
yeah,
it is what it is.
yeah.
Well,
Very
good. I'm
true.
glad you could make it here.
Yeah, thanks for the invite. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and when Dan Thompson mentioned this, I was like, it seems very serendipitous, and that over, as we are coming together to form NAFTA, you are over in the UK forming something in the same general vein, which is
Yeah.
very interesting to us. So I appreciate you being here, and so let's tell people who you are. So you're Jon Isaacs. You are the founder and co-chair of the Gym Safety Council in the UK, otherwise known as the GSC.
That's it.
Um, you're a professional registered assessor at IET. You'll have to explain to me what that means. Chartered engineer, which means I guess you are approved as an engineer. You have a degree in engineering. I guess that's what that's going to mean. Um, and you're the technical manager at Birmingham City University. GS, the Gym Safety Council promotes equipment usage and operation, quality repair and maintenance of fitness equipment, and staff training and management process. Is there something in there that I do not have for the GSC? Is that the main core tenants?
Those are absolutely the main thrusts.
Okay.
Yes, that's
And
right. And
then,
to pick up on your point just a moment ago, that we did sort of start completely independently, and it was then looking to see who was around doing this kind of thing that actually connected us with you. And I was pleasantly surprised that you were. I mean, I think you're probably 12 months ahead of us in terms of your formation and what your journey so far. But yeah, it's quite a coincidence. We were both looking at this as an opportunity to do something positive.
it
The same
truly
time.
is. Do I have this correct that you and your wife had a fitness equipment repair business for quite some time, and do you still have it?
Yes, that is correctly true. We did liquidate the business due to COVID, mainly because it was becoming increasingly difficult. So when we started off the business in 2003, we at that point were in the business of designing and building machines, predominantly for industry. They were special purpose machines. So that's my kind of background. And we got into the realms of fitness machines in 2008, if you remember, with the banks collapsing
Okay.
and what was, I think, what's called the credit crunch these days. But anyway, I'm sure you remember that time vividly. And we had to diversify because there wasn't money around for industrial customers to buy machines. And that was how we sort of transitioned into the fitness world. We thought, well, we're engineers, we can fix things. How hard can a treadmill be? And it turned out it was more of a challenge than I ever expected, really, because there's a lot of specialist stuff there.
You
Um,
know what? Thank you for saying that. Say it louder for those in the back. Literally, I think that we are often undervalued because people see a treadmill, an elliptical, and they go, how hard can it be?
yeah,
Well, it's got
that's
a
right.
lot of little things in it. And then
Yeah,
the manufacturers are really good at not sharing very key things that we should know,
yeah.
um, specifically in the electrical side of things, because we can figure out the mechanical. It's just turning, it's just bolted, it's just this, right? We know when that's broken. It's the electrical. Good. I'm glad. Thank you, man. You just validated my
So
whole reason of being here.
absolutely. So at that time, we started off the business. I started, so it was myself and my wife. We had probably at that time maybe three or four people in the business, but that grew into a business of let's say 20 odd people, and we had about 10 vans, and we were moving around the UK. So we covered pretty much the entire UK, which is obviously compared to your territory, that's almost a viable thing to do. We did struggle with some of the extremities, but the population's less, so it wasn't really an issue at all. And then when COVID came around, we had over here we had at least three. Well, I recall at least three shutdowns. There might have been more lockdowns rather, and it turned out that restarting the business after every lockdown was problematic. We basically ran out of cash. Well, ran out of cash in the sense of that Alison and I, as the business owners, we decided we didn't really want to remortgage the house again and pump a whole load of money into the business. So we could have done, but we chose not to. We chose at that point, having run the business for the best part of 20 years, we thought, you know what, we've had enough. We'd like to do other things with our life. So it was a conscious decision to liquidate the business, but I still carry on as a sole trader. So I've got, as you've seen from my LinkedIn profile, I've got various strands of what I do. It's all engineering based, but
Mhm.
I work at the university. I do this thing with the IET, which is just to digress slightly, that's the Institute of Engineering and Technology. So it's kind of equivalent over here to perhaps the IEEE in the States.
Okay,
So it's a professional organization. Okay, so
I'm not an
these
engineer,
are,
so you would have. I'm going to presume that that is a certification that allows you to do XYZ.
yeah, it is. It's like it's basically it's a professional organization where people pay. You have to reach a certain minimum educational standard, which these days is a degree with a master's
Okay.
attached onto it, or let's say probably realistically 10 or 15 years of relevant works experience to be able to get the qualification that you need to enter these professional bodies.
So that begs the question to me, and it's interesting because you have all this knowledge coming into the fitness industry. Why did you what said, oh, fitness equipment is what we want to do as our side gig, essentially? Like what?
Because well, what happened, I didn't plan it that way. What happened was in 2008 we knew the business probably had about 6 months to run before we would run out of cash. You go through these, I've learned, you go through these cycles of
Mhm.
change every so often. And at that particular cycle, we had customer orders on the books, and we knew that we weren't going to get any more customer orders in the short to medium term until the market recovered. So we had 6 months to finish those orders we had, complete that work. And that gave us enough time to think, well, what are we going to do? And we thought, well, we're engineers, we can fix things. So we started a little Google AdWords campaign. And it basically said that we're engineers, we can fix things. Send us your stuff to fix. And people started sending all manner of things, like, like people, we got inquiries for can you fix a microwave oven? Can you? I've got these hair curling tongs. Can you fit? And they were arriving in the post, and we soon realised that actually, in this very much at that time, the repairability of things wasn't really on the agenda. These were disposable things, and there was no consideration to repair at all. And we quickly realised that by the time we've charged you, let's say £25 an hour to look at this thing, you could have gone and bought out two new ones probably. So, but in amongst all that noise, there were people saying, "I've got a treadmill. I've got a treadmill. Can you fix it?" And we picked up on this, and then changed the Google AdWords campaign to say we fix treadmills, and the phones and the emails just lit up. It was like we really struck on a seam of gold, if you like, and so focused on that, and then obviously that brought us into the world of fitness, and the business really took off from there. We quickly went from a place where I was just going out on my own. We changed our staff because some of the staff didn't really want to go out on the road. They were used to working in a workshop, building things, and then the idea of getting a van and basically being on the road didn't suit them. So we brought new people in. The business grew, and we went to a place where we had 20 staff, 10 vans, contracts with Matrix, Life Fitness, for the big 24/7 gyms over here, like Pure Gym and the Gym Group. They're the big players here, and it wasn't direct with them. We were always subcontracted through people like Matrix and Life Fitness, but we did sort of choose. In the end, we aligned ourselves more with Matrix, who are, that's Johnson Healthcare, as you know. And I found as an organisation, their kind of ethical point of view as to how they we got paid a reasonable amount for the work we did, and we helped them grow in the UK as one of their key service providers. So that took us up to COVID really, and then COVID we decided to exit. But my main focus now on the fitness industry is not so much repairing things. I still am on the tools. I do go out periodically for some selected clients, but predominantly it's about training people, sharing that knowledge, sharing that expertise, showing people how to do things and do things safely, and hence the safety angle where we get to with the GSC.
And that's excellent. Yeah, that is highly needed. You brought up Johnson and you brought up Pure Fitness. So the the uh the interesting, I guess, connections that we would have is um Jamie Burton, who was big with Inside of Matrix, has left and is now bringing over Pure.
Jamie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
is bringing Pure Fit to the US. I've had conversations with him.
Okay.
He is using he once he connected with NAHFTA, he's like, oh, I have a wealth of people I can connect to that are at
Yeah.
least there's at least a group of people trying to say we want to be better, you know. And so there's the occasional contacts with him as he gets launched over here. He is bringing that new brand over. Um, and then one of the things he said was that we talked about that's a big bone of contention here is manufacturer relationship with the independent service provider.
Mm-hmm.
And most, and at the top of that list would be income from them. And we've learned through just the couple conversations that we have, there's an extreme income difference in the US versus overseas.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, in the way things are getting handled, and we are much lower. Um,
Really?
yeah. Don't know if that's true yet. We'll figure that out over time. But let's back up. So you got to you got into fitness equipment and you suddenly realized there's much more to this. What were the things that sort of threw you, that caught you off guard? Being an engineer, because I hear the tone of you walked in and go, it's just fitness equipment. It's just a treadmill.
Right.
It's an electrical motor. It's a couple circuit boards and it's an incline motor and this thing that goes around, or it's an elliptical. And all it does is do this, right? What was it that was surprising to you on how uh, complex it might have actually been?
I think I mean the obvious thing. I mean, my background, so far as my degree went, was it was electronics and computer technology. That's where I specialized. Strangely enough, I've worked exclusively really in the mechanical world. So I've never, outside of a university environment, I've never designed a circuit, just to put that into context.
Okay.
But I know how electrical and electronic things works. I know how computers work. And the things like pulse width modulation, I didn't know. I was curious as to how is this machine doing what it does. And how do you test pulse width modulation? Because the obvious thing is, if you wanted to check the output of an MCB, a controller, you'd think, well, I'll put a multimeter on the output that's going to the motor, and then I'll measure what's coming out. But you can't, because it turns out that it's pulse width modulation. Well, there's not a setting on your regular digital multimeter for that, so you can't measure it. Even if you could measure it, you've got big capacitors in there, and those capacitors store charge. So even with the power off, you can get a voltage on the output, because you've got these whacking great big capacitors that are all part of the smoothing out of that AC to DC conversion. And they're obviously discharging through your meter and giving you a false reading. So that was one quite challenging aspect. We think, well, how do you test that? So the solution to that was, well, we actually got a regular light bulb in the end, because that represents a big enough electrical load. So I'm talking about one of the traditional light bulbs with a tungsten filament,
Okay.
rather than an LED type. But that connected onto the output of an MCB was sufficient load where it would discharge the capacitor, and it would show pulse width modulation, because if you're on a slow speed on your console, you set it to like 1 mile an hour, the light bulb comes on dim. And if you set it higher, it starts to glow. And it was a very convenient and easy and robust solution for testing the output of an MCB, because you know as well as I do, the way they fail is that they will either not work at all and you get no output, but you have to discharge the capacitors to know that. So the light bulb will tell you that. And the other failure mode is they'll be on maximum output all the time. And of course, when that happens, you connect the light bulb, you turn it on straight away, the light bulb goes to maximum brightness, and you think, well, that's not right. It should be starting off dim and then glowing. So that was a very easy test, but it's easy to describe, but it took us a long time to get there. There was a lot of pain in going out and thinking, well, why have we just... Because if you diagnose it wrong, you'll think, well, it's the motor. Or you could think it's the motor. Which is another interesting point, which is the second thing I learned, that DC motors, which do crop up still an awful lot in domestic machines, not so much in commercial stuff these days, but certainly on domestic machines, you will probably find a DC motor there. They've got permanent magnets. And the problem comes, of course, that when you connect the MCB with the failure mode where it's giving out maximum voltage, you'll absolutely destroy the magnetism in that DC motor, which means that the DC motor won't last long, because you've not got the magnetism to make the motor turn anymore. So it will still turn, but it will be drawing way too much current. The amps will be off the scale. So you'll quickly destroy your new MCB that you've just connected, unless you've got a good motor. So that took us into the world of, well, how do you test a DC motor? Now, I don't know what it's like in your territory, but over here, DC motors are quite a rare thing outside of the fitness industry. There's plenty of motor rewind specialists up and down the country, but they deal, I would say 99% of what they do is AC motors. And they're easy to test. They're easy to rewire. They're easy to repair, well, relatively speaking. There's a good level of understanding. But I was taking DC motors to these people and saying, can you test it? And they would test it and say, yeah, it's fine, John. I would then go back to the premises, fit it back on the machine and think, well, it's still not right. Take it back off. And in the end, this is how we uncovered that, well, you need to be able to test the magnets in the DC motor. So how do you do that? There's not a convenient test for that. Well, as it turns out, there is, because you can actually power the motor on an independent motor drive. So there's industrial motor drives, which are very robust. They're relatively inexpensive. So we got ourselves a bunch of these, gave those to the technicians. So they were able to go out, independently power the DC motor, take a current reading. Obviously, if the current was very high, which over here we work on 240 volts, so the current is typically on a good treadmill, it's probably 3 to 5 amps, which means that if you're reading 9 or 10 amps, we know that, let me say, 9 or 10 amps, and you know that the friction on the belt is good, it's well lubricated, that you haven't got any sort of stickiness on the belt, then you know that the motor is faulty, the magnets have gone, therefore you need a motor and an MCB. Then you think, well, why have they failed? And invariably it's because there's too much friction between the belt and the deck. You need a belt, probably you need a deck. Certainly on the domestic machines, that was quite common. Commercial machines are not so, you can often just change the belt, of course, but so those are some examples of what we learned, and it probably took us 3-4 years really to get on top of that. I would say it was probably by sort of 2012 to 14, somewhere around that time, where I felt we were getting on top of things and we actually then knew what we were talking about. So from a position of coming into this as an engineer, thinking I know how to build machines and a track record of building machines, but not fitness machines, it then took me from 2008 to, let's say, 2012-ish to reach a point where I thought, right, I understand what's going on now. And through trial and error and uncovering examples like this, we got to a point where we were developing standard operating procedures for our guys. And really, I think as an independent, leading the way. And that when we built the relationship with Matrix, I ended up writing service procedures for them, because although they'd got service procedures, they weren't really doing any of those tests. And in the end, Matrix did develop a sort of belt and deck friction test, which I thought was more sophisticated than the one I came up with, because they were able to produce it on an app that their technicians could use, and you put in like the angle of the incline as well, and it was a little more sophisticated, but essentially got you to the same place.
Yeah, that only
and it
got
was interesting
introduced.
working with them on that.
Yeah, that only got introduced to us in the US over the last couple of years, is that friction test, which I like. I mean, once you
Yeah,
understand how it works and you just plug in your numbers, and it tells you
yeah,
what they flip the deck, spin the deck, flip the deck, get a new deck, whatever,
absolutely.
it
Yeah,
makes sense. Now, I like the light bulb. That is
yeah,
that is an interesting way to think. It's amazing how creative we can get in this industry.
yeah, yeah.
Trying to figure out solutions to things that no one gives us the answers on.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you were to look at it from an engineering point of view, there are instruments that we could use to test this. It's called an oscilloscope, but
You
I
just,
mean, I would struggle to set up an oscilloscope on the bench. Never mind out in a gym somewhere. It's just not something you can do. You need to understand really exactly what you're trying to set, and the light bulb just kind of circumvents all of that.
yeah, yeah. And that's one of the things that we're hoping. Well, I'm hoping, as we talk here, I'm envisioning how the GSC and NAHFTA over time will hopefully develop a good relationship. And one of the things that I'm praying for that comes forth through all this is people like yourself and other people in the industry that are more technical. I'm not. I will be the first to admit I'm not a natural mechanical person. Everything I know how to do is because it got beat into me.
Yep,
I learned slowly.
yep,
I come to, I come, well, I get to the point of understanding on a slower train than others. Um, but I've been doing this now for 15 years, and I'm still not the best. You would not put me in the master mechanic category, you would not, but I can get a lot of things done. I can get a lot of things done quickly, and I can get, and I have a good success rate.
yep.
But I look forward to people like yourself helping us create tools to be
Absolutely.
more
Yeah,
successful quicker and
yeah,
faster.
yeah,
Um, and I would like to figure out what is the field version of that light bulb that is recurring every single time without burning out the filament,
yeah,
or that you're quicker not to explode the filament. right? Or if because it's not like we can go out and quickly get light bulbs these days that are not LED.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
You know, how can we create an LED version of that or a little box that glows, right?
Yep.
In a certain
Yep.
way. That would be an amazing tool for us, right? To figure
Yep.
out. I've not heard of that. It's a great trick.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, interesting. Very interesting. Okay. So COVID hits, and I'm going to presume in the UK they did not do any kind of bailout loans like we did in the US.
Yeah, they did. I mean, we took a bailout loan. We had, I mean, I get even now I still get irritated by it. If because we were trading as a limited company at that time, which means I was a director of the business. There wasn't any assistance for directors of businesses. Um, the business I couldn't take because the laws of the land mean that I just can't take money out of the business if the business can't afford to pay me. That's fraudulent. But there was no bailout for the directors, so we were very much on our own for that period of what was 12, 18 months, whatever it was.
Could you
And
pay your employees if
yeah,
it
there
was
was a there was a furlough scheme, so we could pay employees, and all of our employees, well, they stayed loyal, and they were receiving 80% of their salary for not working, and generally they were happy, if that's the right word, with that situation. But to keep the business afloat, we weren't able to maintain the payments on the loans, for example, on the vans, on the 10 vans, that we were able to negotiate 2 or 3 months of like a payment holiday, but we weren't able to negotiate 18 months of non-payment while we got the business back on its feet. So we did take out a loan from the government to keep the business afloat, but then when things started to recover, we knew that we would have to pay back that loan. It wasn't a free gift. And that you put that into the equation and you look at all the rest of the costs and how you've basically run out of money, and you think, well, I'll be working for the next 10 years just to get back to where we were. And
you know,
it didn't make sense. And also, it was much more competitive then as well. It is now. When we first started, it was very much a niche, and we found ourselves with the only people there really outside of the manufacturers. But you look at who's doing it now up and down the land, and there's lots of people. And this is another aspect. Well, you think, well, who's training those people? What because of everything we talked about just 5 minutes ago, it's clear that even if you're an electronics person or an electrician or even someone with a degree who is on paper capable of doing this, that's not going to make you capable and safe working in people's houses, working in people's gyms, working in schools, working in hotels, wherever you might end up going. And that's the real worry for me. I think that we need to do that. There needs to be some accreditation, voluntary, but it's got to be accessible. And it starts with having a conversation about it and pointing it out. And I think that's very much where we align. Although I think you're looking at it from, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to be more to do with how technicians in the field are perhaps perceived and how they're rewarded and how they're recognised. My angle on it is that, but it's more driven by the safety. I look at what people are doing
yeah.
out in the field and think, man, this is not right for the 21st century. We can do better than this.
You're absolutely correct. We are going to get to the place where you are starting once we have a verified collective of people, because there is a big rift between manufacturing and us and information. And um, for those who've been around for extended periods as a business and have lasted, the vast majority have had extreme run-ins with manufacturing.
Yeah,
And at the end of the day, they'll just cut you off if you push
yeah,
hard enough.
yeah,
And if you push back on processes that they have or wanting very specific knowledge, accountabilities, things like that. And So we are trying to clean up our side of the street that we can first before we talk about the other side of the street. You're doing that in your own way, I guess. Um, I look forward to maybe much broader conversations on becoming better in this side of safety and learning proper techniques because that's what we're talking about a lot. And there are people who really want to. There's been a lot of talk of third party schools where we hopefully get the buy-in of the manufacturers because I don't think manufacturers really want to do their training. They don't want to do any training. In fact, there's not a lot of
Yeah,
training. I mean, you
yeah,
go to class for 2 days to 4 days, depending on where you go. And the reality is you're taught high level stuff and you don't get in the weeds.
yeah. No, I agree. I've been on the
And you got
same
to get in the
courses.
weeds.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
you got to get down there and figure out, like literally, if you go to training in the US, every piece of machinery there just about works.
yeah,
It's like, well, you need to teach me on things that are broken
yeah,
and teach me to fix them so I actually learn, not just hitting all the high levels. This is the new console. This is how you do this. This is how you do that. This is, so I think we're all in the same boat. Your website for the Gym Safety Council mentions mediation and arbitration. It says providing options for resolving disputes between manufacturers and service technicians. Uh, that's a big bite. That's a lot to
yeah,
take home.
yeah. I mean, that's to do with really that comes out of being asked to look at things independently. So often I regularly get inquiries where there's a dispute between, to be fair, usually it's the end user and the reseller or the retailer, where the machine's just not working as it should do, or there's a discrepancy in what perhaps the end user expects. So I had one this week where the client my client had got a Soul F85 treadmill, which is it's a nice domestic machine.
Hmm.
And straight away I think, well, I've seen plenty of those. I know they're good machines. You know, they're not constructed in a sort of slapdash or a cost cutting way. It's done professionally. Anyway, they're complaining about a squeak every time you plant your foot on the deck, and it's quite obvious it's a pivot. It needs a bit of lubrication. So in that particular case, I'm able to send the the end user some information and say, and just guide them really and say, look, this doesn't strike me as being a manufacturing defect. This happens. The machine's new. Don't worry about it because it's not likely to have affected the machine or its longevity in any way. And this is what you can do. Try a little bit of lube like this and send them a little video on YouTube. So I'm waiting for them to get back. So that's one example of how that might occur. But in other cases, I'm writing a report perhaps for an insurance company where there's a claim going on and they just want a third party independent point of view. And in approaching that, I say, look, I will give you a third party independent point of view and explain it and justify it, but it might not be the point of view you want. I might say that actually this isn't a manufacturing defect, where often the client is sort of coming to me saying, I think it's a manufacturing defect.
Hmm.
I need a report, John, that says it is. So, well, it might be, or it might not be.
Yeah.
So that's what that is. I mean, I don't see that as being a main thrust of the Gym Safety Council. But again, if we've got that information and we're having the conversation and putting that information out there, then it would make sense to sort of bolt that on to what we're doing because again, who else are you going to go to? If you're going to go to your local electrician, what's he or she going to know about it?
Hmm. So I see that you just recently you just finished teaching a young man at a facility. You were posting that on LinkedIn.
Oh, that's right.
Do
Yeah,
you
that was
do
last week, I think.
one-on-ones or do you try to do class based where you at least have a certain amount of people? Um, how does that work for you when you're training
Well,
on maintenance and repair issues?
at the moment, it's generally been one-to-one. I mean, the biggest class size I've had is 6, and I find that is a challenge to do. For for all the sort of reasons where you were saying a moment ago, you need to get in the weeds, you know. So 1-to-1 works really well. 2 or 3-to-1 works really well because you've got enough time to be able to get into the weeds and sort of show people and guide them. But more than 6, it's very difficult to set up those problems and for everybody to have an opportunity. Now, I think where I'd like to go with the Gym Safety Council is apply for some funding on a charitable basis. There's plenty of people over here we could apply to. Maybe even businesses as well might support it in due course, but get some funding in where we can offer this kind of, maybe just make it more accessible, because when you're on a one-to-one basis, then the client is effectively paying for one person for my time. And that's expensive.
Yeah.
What would be great is if we could have a room of 10 or 15 and maybe, you know, a couple of days, 2 or 3 days, whatever might be reasonable, and actually take them through a structured course where we've got standard known faults that we can set up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we could do this, you know, in a hotel environment. If we could rent a room, I've sort of been through the costings, and it would work. But the first thing is we need to get the message out there, because the people who need to do this at the moment don't really know they need to do it.
So you're essentially right now doing 101s with a service technician working at XY gym, and the XY gym is paying you to come in and train their tech,
Yes, that's
essentially,
correct.
and
Or it's a
get
yeah,
deeper into maybe what they're going to get at the surface level from going to the manufacturer to be certified.
that's exactly right. Yeah, yeah,
Okay. Yeah, I can understand why that's a problem. And you're hitting on your idea of, like, renting out his place is exactly what a lot of us have sort of had conversations on in the US. The example would be, let's just use the central portion of the country. So like St. Louis sits like right
yeah,
dab in the center, right? Where everyone can get to. And it makes more sense to us that if we could get manufacturer involved, um, one, this is hierarchical. Maybe you can use this in your area too. Let's just say, what is dead center of the UK for you guys?
it would be, well, it's kind of where I am.
Uh,
I'm about, you know, if you said Birmingham, that's the second city in the UK. I'm just south of Birmingham,
Okay.
geographically, and you know, all the large population areas would be able to get to there.
So in Birmingham, what you would do, we would do the same thing here, where there's a school set up, essentially, that the manufacturers, when they're pulling equipment out to replace, they send you the broken stuff. And you can set it up, and then they send you the components to be able to train off of. And the
Yeah,
way I look at it is, you set this thing up to be broken. You have this selection of components over here. You give them the task, you know, figure out what's going on with this treadmill, and you have different brands of treadmills set up, and then you have the components on the shelves, and they go over and they figure out what they need to do, and they work through it. They do it in teams of two, and you need to hear them talking to each other and working together and thinking it out and
I think it's a
challenging,
great
and have
idea.
stuff that's
Yeah,
super hard. Teaching the light bulb trick. Oh my gosh,
yeah,
I
yeah,
I would like to see how that actually works, right? And how that works versus your power system versus our power system in the US, right? Like, how's that play differently? Um, but why would the manufacturers not want to do that when and whoever the instructors are, they're taught to be master technicians for XYZ manufacturer. Um, and then they can reduce their expenditure on training themselves and their tech support.
yeah,
But if we go through this school and we're continuously educating ourselves, then we get certified at different tiers, just like you would in automobiles, just like you would in, like, elevators have different, people who work on elevators, all different kinds of manufacturing. There's different tiers. We don't have that. It's very
mhm,
willy-nilly. Oh, today I showed up and, hi, I'm John Smith with XYZ fitness equipment repair. Well, how did you learn? What
yeah,
does that matter? And we have that problem in the US,
yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah.
where
I
I was
think you're
taught that
right.
way.
Yeah,
Literally, the way I got into the industry is I had no engineering background. I had been in office furniture building cubicles and was just, I needed a job. In 2008, I lost everything because the first thing that stopped was offices stopped moving. They stopped
Yeah.
buying furniture. I ended up landscaping and I fell into this job. And I worked for a company that only did iFit products and
Okay. Yeah.
had zero training, zero, none. I didn't know what a multimeter was. I didn't know how it worked. Didn't know anything about electrical. I
Yep.
knew the basics of mechanics, so I could get mechanic real quick, but that's the easy part. Everything else in electrical is hard. It took me years. I was the person you did not want in your home for the first couple of years.
Yeah. Yeah. But what you described there, I mean, that's kind of it's I suppose it's typical of the sort of people I see when I used to recruit people to be technicians. What I was really looking for was for people who had the right attitude. They were good with customers, and they were dependable, organized. It didn't matter about their technical ability because I always
So
felt,
why
well,
does that
I
matter
can
so
train you
much?
that.
Why does that matter so much to be the first thing that you wanted to that's the person you're looking for? Why does that matter so much to you?
What? Just ask that question again.
That why those characteristics are so important to you to start with.
Okay, but because um, they're representing you, that was certainly the case in my business. They were representing me, my business, my staff. They were also representing Matrix. We did work for Icon as well. Not for very long. I didn't like that. Um, uh, and you, I mean, the people who didn't fit the profile, it didn't really have an awful lot to do with their technical skills because I was training them and able to train them in a formal way, in the way that you're describing. I knew that they were capable of doing it or not. So at the interview, I could say I had a little practical tested interview where I could see if they'd actually were able to hold a screwdriver and had any kind of dexterity. And if they did, that was great because I could give them the rest. But I'm not, my background, I love working with machines because they're infinitely predictable. For me, people are a challenge because they're not infinitely predictable. Well, if I can get, and I can't train people because I find that a challenge myself. Um, but building a relationship with a client, the first thing you do when you get on site and turning up and being punctual or having that attitude to phone ahead if you're going to be late, or all of the things that you and I would take for granted having done this sort of work. But for people who haven't, it's difficult. And where I found it didn't work was where they just didn't have any awareness of those kind of softer skills. That was the key because if they came in with that and they could hold a screwdriver, I could give them everything else they needed. And it used to take 3 to 6 months to get them to a point where they were competent, which is another reason, incidentally, why I chose to exit the business, because what we were able to pay these people, I was training them up, and typically they would then leave after perhaps a year, 18 months, and go and get a job in uh, another, let's say, engineering or technician related role, but at £10,000 more than I could pay. So I was paying them typically £25,000, £28,000 at a push. This is 5 years ago. They would be able to walk into jobs at £35,000 easily, and they would. And I've, getting back to the point about what you're saying about what people get paid. Unfortunately, I found that in working at that sort of £25,000 group demographic, the problem was I got a certain quality of person, and it was it was hard to find people at that price point with those soft skills because obviously those are the sort of people who you would expect to be in successful jobs already. So I was tending to find people who were maybe contracting, maybe previously been labourers. I mean, one of the best people I had was actually a hairdresser. She was great with her hands. She was great at talking with people. She we got so much good feedback about her. And then she left and ended up working for British Telecom, who do, sort of internet broadband services, that kind of thing. And
I really want to promote more women in our industry.
yeah,
I think
absolutely.
they're really good at this.
Yeah, absolutely. They are.
Um,
There's no reason why they can't. There was
Personality
no,
wise,
yeah,
demeanor, how they, there's just the two things: strength, because we do have to move heavy objects at
yeah,
times, push them around, brute force. Um, and if they don't have a lot of the strength, the understanding of how can I manipulate this to do what I need it to do, and then obviously understanding mechanics, willing to understand that they are smart enough when they've been taught maybe in growing up that they mechanics are for boys,
yeah, I know what
or
you're saying.
whatever that is that stops them from learning that they actually can do this and they can be really good at this.
Yeah,
Um, one of our best employees, Daphne, is just you know she's just a team player. She does what's necessary. She figures it out. Um, she has good opinions, good thoughts, and yeah, I want to find more, and then I want to find more.
yeah.
So I agree with you there.
These people seem to be quite rare, don't they? And then getting them to stay, or
Yeah,
having found them, you really want them to stay, and it's
yeah. And how do you keep them? And
it's a problem.
how do you provide something over what you can pay them? What kind
Yeah,
of environment are you creating that makes them want to stay past the pay scale? But you did touch on that, and that's the interesting part that we're talking about in the U.S. is that if we are charging you non-warranty on our own, pay scale's great. It's
yeah,
very sustainable. The interesting part in the US is I now, if I'm efficient at what I do, I now can make more money doing one residential iFit job
yeah,
slash icon than I can doing for the same time period it took me to do iFit than I can making money for the commercial manufacturers.
yeah. I found exactly the
Because
same.
they are paying you in quarterly hours. They do not pay you for the first hour up front. And that's the first thing I would love to see change. I don't know if that's happening in the UK. Are they paying you automatically for the first hour, or are they paying you in quarterly increments?
Uh, I'll be
You know?
perfectly honest. Well, we used to have a contract with Icon, obviously the Nordic Track and Proform
Mhm.
brands and whatever. I stepped away from that because I didn't like the way they were treating their customers, and invariably we're turning up at people's houses because they're obviously predominantly domestic machines, domestic equipment, and the people were really having a go at us really because by then they'd already been waiting like 6 weeks. They might already be this might already be the second or third repair attempt, um, and then the part had arrived or it's the wrong part because they would diagnose it over the phone and they say, oh, you need an EMS controller. We turn up with a controller. You think, well, we can fit the controller, but it's going to happen again because you need a new belt. That's the problem, and you need a new motor as well. And then the customers really, really cheesed off because you're effectively saying to them, well, look, to fix this problem, this is what you need to do. And so for all those sort of reasons, we got rid of Icon, and that was on a fixed rate per job. So first hour, we got paid for the call out and the first hour, and that was it.
Mhm.
Um, but that was really just not sustainable for where we wanted to be.
Yeah.
The relationship we had with Matrix started off a bit like that, but it evolved because that kind of contract didn't work for me. And I found that Matrix had other people who would do, let's call it, if you like, the heavy lifting. They would go in at the £60 an hour rate or whatever it was back then, and they would do the job. And when it went wrong, I tended to get called in. So we built the relationship that way as being a center of technical capability, should we say. And on the back of that, I tended to look after all of Matrix aftermarket stuff. So this would be the equipment which was so it was more than 3 years old. And if it were more than 3 years old, then generally I would be looking after that. Because Matrix wanted with their own stuff and their own kind of, I don't know what you call them. But anyway, their other service technicians, they were best deployed at that sort of 0 to 3 year lifespan, simply because it's much more predictable. You're not going to be changing running belts often. The faults are going to be early life faults where it's going to be, yeah, you probably do need a new controller, or you do that button's broken, go and change the button, whatever. It is much more predictable. Whereas when you start factoring in wear and age, it becomes much more unpredictable. So that was where we were, and then we would be charged. Forget whether I think we were charging £85 an hour for that work, which for me at the time was a much better rate than £65 an hour. We also had the ability to do servicing and repairs. So if we went, for example, and said, look, no, I'll give you an example. We would get a job issued to us. We would order the parts via Matrix for the job. So we would look at the job, and then with our expertise, we were able to say, well, I think we ought to take a belt and a deck for that one. And we would order in the belt and the deck. That would come to us. We would then take it with us to site, or indeed it would go to site, whichever. Then obviously, if we didn't use it, it would be restocked. So we had a parts warehouse at my facility, and we were able to kind of manage a local parts supply, which ultimately allowed us to service other jobs. And also, if Matrix had a shortage of parts and we happened to have two decks on the shelf because we hadn't used them on previous jobs, or Matrix knew that their stock was there in our warehouse and they were able to arrange to ship it back. So that was kind of where we ended up. And it was a lot of it was built on trust, but I think it worked well for them and it worked well for us. It was just that it aligned much better with that sort of domestic work that I found exactly the same as you described. The domestic work that was where the money was. That was where we could demonstrate our expertise and charge accordingly for that.
It's amazing how there's such similarities across continents in behaviors and techniques.
Incidentally, just at the end, I did go to Matrix after COVID and said, look, we need to put the price up. I think I said to them something like £100 an hour, which over here I didn't think that's unreasonable, because I know that Matrix, Life Fitness, Precor, if you were to call out any of their engineers as a regular gym, you'd be paying £140 for the call out and the first hour included.
We've heard those rumors that
there was a big difference.
We've heard those rumors that and Life Fitness does that. They would pay us peanuts literally throughout the years, and still, I mean, and they still, but what they would charge directly for their engineer, their service tech would be astronomical, and some of the service techs were worth it for sure, and some of them were not. And I think what all of us want across the different continents is the respect for what we do. Don't minimize what we do, because we do the most. And but if you help us become better, we will reduce your in-house staff and that will help justify what you've taught us to do. We don't want to take from you. I don't want to remove your success. I want to help you be more successful in the process, me be successful. But when you minimize the cost of operation, it means that you truly don't understand what we do and what it costs to operate. And you're not understanding actually what it costs to operate your service tech, because you don't have enough of them. So therefore you don't track it the same way, most likely. But we're inviting the conversations. We're having the conversations. It's good that they are engaging with us. We know that we're on the radar. We're about to, Dan Thompson, who you're familiar with, he's writing an article right now where when we ask Core Health and Fitness for a quote, one person on the services side said, do we really want to? And then marketing popped in and said, give us a minute. And they said, our president wants to give you a quote. And so that makes us feel like, okay, we are on the right road. We're making the noise that we need to. And slowly but surely, we have everyone's attention that we're here and we mean business, but we want the whole world to understand that we're not here to harm, but we will disrupt, because we are looking for a healthier industry, financially
Mhm.
first,
Yep.
but also at the same time too, we want the service technicians and the organizations that they operate with, um, to be the best that they can be. The same as in automotive, right? You know, you want that tech working on your car to really know what they're doing.
Yep. Absolutely.
You know, and they have all these forms of training, and that's what we're trying to get to. Because, like you said, there's all these little nuances. You remember when Icon um, had schematics on the underside of the treadmill hood, and then
Yep.
they took it out. Now,
Yep.
I've only recently heard that that was taken out because it was a fire hazard.
Right.
Well, there was also, I think it was Precor, had a sticker with the exact same schematics for theirs. What happened to those? They disappeared. And when you
Yep.
remove certain things, that diminishes us to be able to understand what the voltage should be, what we should be pulling, what we should be reading off of. Because I don't know about you, but we worked on anything and everything, and
Yep.
I can't
Same here.
keep up with all that in my head.
No, not at all. No.
Um, So yeah, there's a lot of importance in that. So where are you at right now in your stage of the GSC? And who else is on who else is a part of this? Because it says that you are a co-chair, and I'm going to presume your wife might be a part of this, but I also know that Dan has sat in on a meeting and he has not explained anything to me. So tell us a little bit more about
Yeah.
what this is and who's involved and
Yeah,
where.
sure. So at the moment, my wife isn't involved, although she might well be in the future because she likes um, the kind of ethical aspect and the community aspect of what we're trying to do here. Um, but the I'm co-founder, if you like, simply because the idea came from a discussion I had a year last September with a client who I was training on my level 2 gym maintenance training course, and he said, "John, you think there would be an organization, a body who would be regulating this?" And we got talking about that. I said, "Well, there isn't, but you're right. You would think there would be, wouldn't you?" And he said, "Well, we should do this." And we were just chatting, and I said, "Yeah, you're right." Yeah. So I kind of slept on it. And when we went back in for the next day of the training, I said, "You're onto something there. It's a really good idea." And I'm the sort of person who thinks that if I wake up the following day and still think it's a good idea, then it probably is a good idea. Whereas often I think I'll have good ideas, and if I wake up the next day and I'm thinking, "Oh, that was terrible," I kind of bin it. But this was an idea that was sticking around, and so we went from there. So we got about, I forget the exact number. It's around about 10 people who were involved. They're all industry players, so they're all either CEOs or business owners or people of responsibility within the trade, and they're from a cross section as well. We're not all technicians. Um, the guy I was just talking to, I was training. He's a PT in the gym, so he's actually qualified in physical exercise, and he works in a school. We've got the CEO of it's an organization called Clubright, so they look after all the kind of subscriptions to do with running gyms and provide all that sort of service and direct debits and things like that. We got a gym owner. This is this is a premium gym, so this is the owner of the gym where I was last week in Jersey training Paul. It's the owner of the facility there. I've got an independent gym owner who's got multiple sites. He's probably got 4 or 5 sites. If I said he's more at the kind of boxing club end of the market, so we've got a premium representative of us like a spa and a hotel, and at I shouldn't the other end of the spectrum, but I don't mean that disrespectfully. This guy's got kind of very much it's about strength. It's about just lifting big
Yeah.
weights in a different kind of a gym environment. So he's there. I've got someone who's involved in charitable gyms. There's a charitable trust, so she's run that and has also experience of getting finance. She's setting up a gym at the moment somewhere in London. Uh, who else have we got? We got a service guy who runs a business rather like the one I used to run with vans and people around the country. It's called Hire Fitness. So they started off hiring gym equipment, and they're based near London, and they do a lot of work actually with film and television production. So if they're so that's how their business has grown, and it's kind of diversified into the servicing and maintenance of fitness equipment kind of anywhere really. So he's been trained up, and he came on board because I trained his guys, and we were just chatting at lunch, and he said, "Yeah, that sounds really interesting, John. I'd like to be part of that." So that's kind of where we are at the moment. We've had a few drop out. There was a guy from the fire service who, and the firefighting. I mean, they're obviously into their physical fitness, and there's fire stations up and down the land that need to be looked after. And this guy is still on the periphery, but he's not an active member. And we've also got the guy who heads up the after sales service for Johnson on an international basis, and again, he's not willing to kind of visibly be participating in this because of potential conflicts with his job. So he's kind of, if I said he's in the shadows, that I'm keeping him briefed as to what's going on and where we're at. But he sort of said, look, he said, John, I'm really interested in what you're doing, but I can't because this would need a discussion with my employer. And at the moment,
that's what we want to change, right? It's
Yeah,
exactly what we want to change. That everyone wants to have someone involved because we understand that we are all coming to the table for something that's positive. Now, it's going to be painful at first for everybody because you're going to get confronted that the same old way of doing things do not serve us today the way they did in the late 90s through the early the 2000s, right?
Yep.
Equipment's changing, life has changed, cost of operation has changed, technologies are changing. So you know interesting. So what is, I guess the question is like, what is the what's the arching vision? Like if you like when you sit, when you're just thinking, and you're in your chair at home or whatever, and you're just thinking about what's going on, where do you envision this becoming? Like completely.
So
Like what does this look like for you?
how I envisage it is it's got to be accessible. So I'm seeing this as a in the UK we're going to be setting ourselves up. At the moment we are simply a collection of people. We don't exist as a formal business entity. So I can't trade yet because although I trade as me, I can't apply for funding and any kind of grant or financial assistance because in the commercial world where I am, people don't do that. So we're going to set up as a charitable organization that will allow us to apply for funding. I'm rather anticipating that we'll be able to focus in on let's say, the less well-served aspects of our industry. So people like the boxing clubs, the youth clubs, perhaps the schools, not the big chains, because I think they're big enough, they're financially sound enough. If they don't know what the right thing to do is, well, all we can do is be having a conversation with them. But in terms of being able to afford it, well, they're not our target market because the people who need the services and the information and need that step up are by definition not in a position to pay for it. So our first mission is to set ourselves up, get some funding in place, take the training course out, make it accessible. So maybe these people are making a contribution towards it. I'm not suggesting doing it for free, but make it accessible so we can make an impact at the ground level, and get the industry to recognize and see what's going on. So the likes of the Gym Group and Life Fitness and Matrix and Precall and Star Trek or Core, whoever, and all the other new, names who are coming from overseas as well, they're kind of looking at this and thinking, there's something going on here. We need to be part of this. And I think they will. Just by publishing the relatively few things we have published so far, I've already got an interest from UK Active, who are they are the industry trade body. it's a commercial enterprise, but gyms can sign up to UK Active. They probably pay £5,000 or £6,000 a year for a membership, so it's not cheap. But UK Active do not service in any way the technicians, nothing to do with safety. And the question I have for them is, well, why? Why are you not? So long term, the future could be that the Gym Safety Council, maybe it could simply be a vehicle where this can happen as a thing within another organization of some kind. But we have to do something, and that's the way we start, I think. And to think much beyond 12 months it is hard to imagine what's likely to happen. I think we've got to start by doing something, get some funding, go in with the training, set the standards, talk about it, share that information, and get the industry to wake up. And I think that will get some traction then with what we need to do.
In the United States, so when we were forming and starting our discussions on how to form what NAHFTA is, the structure of it, the business structure, the legal side. In the United States, an organization like what it sounds like that you're setting up, we would call a 501c3. That gives you the status of you're allowed to take donations and spend as need be, and you can pay officers, but you don't work for profit, quote
Yes,
unquote.
that's correct.
Right?
Yeah.
What we set up as is a 501c6, which makes us an association that can take association money and spend not for, let's say, profit, but we are not, the easiest way to say is we're not penalized if we have profit money sitting in the account at the end of the year because we're spending for the better good. Like we're spending on very specific things and we're creating a product, we're providing. Do you have those kind of options?
Yeah, I think what the latter of the two descriptions you just gave there, that sounds more like what we're thinking of. It's
Okay.
called a CIC. It's like a community interest company, I think is
Okay.
what it stands for. But you can make profit, but that profit has to stay within the business.
Yeah.
So as a director of the business, which I would be, if I were trading normally in a commercial world, I would be able to draw that profit out, take it as a dividend.
Yeah.
In a CIC, you can't. It's locked in that business, and you're right. I can be paid, so we can still operate in a commercial way. We can still have commercial funding streams, private funding streams. We can have grants. We can have charity, but we can make profit, and that profit has to. If there is anything left, that has to stay in the business, and that's locked in.
Okay, interesting. All right. So let's pivot. The world of technology is changing. I personally am very curious about artificial intelligence and how it's going to affect our industry. And here's why. A lot of people have been saying, don't worry, the trades are going to be okay for a while. And I agree. But I'm also watching at the same time AI, just the brain trust side of AI, become more and more intelligent quickly. So let's start there. How do you think AI is going to affect what we do, or how can it be a net positive versus net negative? Like, where's the negative do you think that you might be seeing if you're paying attention at all, or where's the positive that you're going to see that's going to help us as an industry?
Yeah. So I see it as a positive thing. I don't think we have to worry about our jobs being at risk. I think the big opportunity, the big plus with AI is the ability to be able to sort and manipulate huge amounts of data. Now, between us all, we've got huge amounts of data. We've got all the job histories of all the jobs we've ever done, if we've got it right, of course. We're able to look at, well, we as humans probably can't do this so easily, but an AI tool could look at, 10 years worth of data. You could ask it to identify the most troublesome brand of machine, identify the models and with the most frequent faults, what those solutions to the faults were, and you could get answers like that if you had that data available. So I think that's hugely advantageous because it allows us to predict what's going to happen and predict the likely causes of faults. So at the diagnosis end, that could be a real game changer, I think, in being able to perhaps develop AI tools where people can, perhaps independently of the likes of you and I, put in information into some kind of portal and, get a reasonably accurate diagnosis based on an awful lot of information around the world. To do that, of course, we've got to share that information if this is going to be a reliable tool. So it's not going to happen in the short term. I think there will be advances in the short term because a lot of the things I'm sure you see with the nature of inquiries that you get, it's a lot of the same old stuff occurring again and again. And you can, purely based on an inquiry, I think there's a lot of us able to look at an inquiry and think, yeah, I know what that is already, simply because I know that machine, what you're describing, it means it's likely to be this that's gone wrong. So the big advantages for us there, the smart ones, I suppose, will monetize that and find ways to maybe charge, $10 or whatever for a diagnosis if we believe it's accurate enough. But I don't think people are going to be. That's not going to solve their problem. It will tell them what the answer is, but it's not fix the machine. So I think we're still going to need hands on the machines. We're still going to need that on the job feedback because what people tell us and what the reality is don't always align. I think it could be hugely beneficial for us as technicians. So when we're out on site, being able to gather technical information, again, massive opportunity. I think Dan said, I think you guys are working on an app. If you can build AI into that, that would be amazing. I've been using an app without AI for probably since 2017, and that's really useful just to be able to access data. But again, the problem with the app that I have is because there's so much information there, you don't really want to be spending 10 minutes on site paging through, trying to find that little bit of information you need. So again, that's where the AI tool could really help with that and be a game changer in helping us remind us and tell us and remind us of the steps that we need to do. If we think it's this, then there you go, John, those are the steps. Step number 1, do this. Oh yeah, I remember. And away you go and do it. So I think that's hugely advantageous. I'm struggling to think of negatives really. I can't think.
So one of the things that keeps coming up in off like side conversations is manufacturing saying that the PDFs that get shared into any artificial intelligence is their property. And
Yeah.
how do you view that? Do you see that as well? That it's a necessity. Do you see that as that's their property? How do you feel about that kind of thought?
It is their property, and it's their property, so I respect their position on how they share it. I think there's a risk of being naive here with them in that, ultimately this is not that hard to work out. And if you think of another, so who's going to be interested in that information? Well, we are as technicians, because we need the accessibility and be able to, fault find or see what this wire does or whatever, where it's supposed to be connected, what the voltage level should be. All of that is really useful information. How useful is that going to be to a competitor? Not very.
Yeah.
Because we're
They're
not
just going to
talking
buy your
about
machine and tear it apart is all they're going to do.
exactly. We're not talking about software code here. We're not talking about, something that's a real game changer. I mean, fundamentally, fitness machines have not changed an awful lot in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
And I don't think they're going to change an awful lot.
But we only add bells and whistles. We can't really build a much better treadmill, a much better elliptical, at this point in time. We make engines, we make motors bigger.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of the stuff is proprietary, and in the manufacturers aren't actually making it themselves; they're buying it in. So you know, as I say, I do respect their need for privacy with stuff, but I think there's a wider view that they can take and be perhaps less concerned about that because ultimately these are traditional machines. They're well understood that it's not going to be that useful commercially to other people. That's my opinion.
Yeah. One of the I was with you when it came to robotics for a while, and I'm still with everybody that I think it's going to be a while. Um, I'm fascinated by the world of AI. More so because it's providing me with the tools that I've longed for a long time. Because again, I told you I'm not the smartest person in the world. You know, there's some
No, well,
places where I really lack,
I'll
and
tell you what, AI makes us all realize we're not the smartest people in the world.
yeah,
Yeah.
and and just different versions of automation that are becoming more and more accessible to enhance your abilities, and that's what I'm enjoying. But in the process, I do catch. I'm not spending a lot of time watching information on robotics at this point in time, but I did catch a video the other day, and especially with like Elon launching, show and them starting to show robots that can work in your kitchen, things like that. So that's what I'm seeing is a quick growth in dexterity. And at some point in time, when the robot can finally do this, um, and show up at your house, that's what makes me nervous. Um,
Yeah, I think that's outside of our lifetime, but
I hope you're
I'm sure
right.
I'm sure it will happen, but
I
I
hope
don't
you're
see it.
right. I really do. You might have a better understanding, having the understanding of engineering processes better than I do, for
Well,
sure.
let me give you an example then, Scott, just to sort of help why I think this is not a practical proposition at the moment, even with a very sophisticated robot with AI, because you know as well as I do, when you go to a treadmill, the first thing you've got to do is take the cover off, and
Hmm.
often those screws are going to be corroded in. The treadmill will be so close to the wall, the first thing you've got to do is actually move it. Um, the screw won't want to come out because it's been corroded in because it's not been off for maybe 5 or 10 years. Then you take the lid off, then it's got to be vacuumed out, and then you try and think of a robot that could practically do that. I mean, we're not talking about a robot that's vacuuming your kitchen. You know, this is a relatively straightforward, simple process with no motions, no controls. It's repeatable and predictable. What we're doing is it's at a high level, it's repeatable and predictable, but there's a heck of a lot of things that we do without thinking about it, which would be incredibly difficult to automate.
Yeah,
Um,
understood.
you know,
Understood.
how is a robot going to drill out a screw? How is a robot going to move the treadmill out to get the angle right, to get to the on-off switch? You think of all those movements that we do, and often we're working on our back, on our knees, and that's why I think it's this idea is beyond our lifetime because all of those nuances that are needed to do that. I'm not saying that we don't have the technology to do it, but that technology has got to be developed and it's got to be debugged and it's got to be the solutions have got to be built practically. We're not talking about just a software algorithm that can relearn, learn and learn and learn and do this over 24 hours. We've got to actually build something, try it, test it, see how it works, iterate it and iterate it and iterate it. And I think that's going to take a long, long time.
That makes me feel better. I look at it as like the peanut butter and jelly problem. When,
Yeah.
if you ever, it's the one thing I learned some time ago is when you're trying to teach something, it's much harder than what most people realize, especially if you're writing it out. Ask someone to teach you how to build a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And in theory, that's simple,
Oh,
right?
exactly right. It's a great example, isn't it? Yeah.
When you ask them, okay, teach me all the steps that they take for granted, that they don't think about, they just do.
Yeah.
No, okay, you got to teach me everything from how to get the bread to how to open the bread to how to, all the little steps the micro steps.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the same in robotics, but still, I'm worried, and I want to be on the side where I'm the organization purchasing the said robot as a companion versus being replaced by said robot.
Yeah, yeah. Or you want to be involved in a robotic company,
There you
giving that
go.
expertise, sharing that expertise with them, and saying, "Look, this is what your robot's got to do." And
Maybe that's what me and you will do, 15 years down the road as we'll start the
maybe
first
that's right.
fitness
Yeah,
equipment, if we're still kicking at that point in time. Uh, you know, so we'll start the first robotics company. But I do believe AI has a place, and
oh, sure. Yeah,
I am excited to see where that goes. And I champion anybody who is messing around with it and trying to figure out how to produce something maybe first in-house for your own staff, and then those who come out with a way to help improve our industry as a whole. Um, I do believe I am in agreement with you that while we can respect training materials and technical documents that are shared with a certified technician with XYZ manufacturer is their property, I'm with you that say it's naive not to go, let's put this into a workable tool, to where all I need to do is type in Precor, you know, elliptical. I don't even have to call it by its full name, right? But just use a general term of elliptical, and I could just put like 800 series or something.
yeah, yeah,
And because maybe the sticker's gone, and it starts with the hierarchical Precor elliptical. It knows 800 series. It goes, pulls documents, and brings things forth to me quickly. Preferably, I'd like to be able to download the original PDF, but if it just gives me a step by step or brings a video forward, because that's the other thing I've never understood too is um, you have more videos doing some things than some manufacturers have teaching. You know,
yeah.
when speaking with other people in the industry, um, I'm baffled that when the manufacturers go to make a video, it's a single camera. The person doing the video is terrible at what at communicating a lot of times, not always. But when it gets into something technical, they stand in the way of the technical thing that they're doing.
Mm,
Why isn't there
yeah,
2 to 3 cameras? You actually set up a studio because it pays dividends to the people working on your stuff.
yeah, yeah.
It's
Very true.
small thinking for a big problem,
Yeah, yeah.
that can easily be rectified by just putting a little production into the video,
Very true. Yeah, yeah.
and whatnot. So,
And
interesting.
I think again, picking up on the AI thread here. What we really need to be doing, I think, is helping people understand why this is happening. Why has this happened? Why are we doing it in this way? How is it working? Because then they're able to fill in the gaps. We don't
Mhm.
need to tell people how to use a screwdriver. We don't need to take them through that level of detail. But it's being able to tailor enough information relative to the capability of the person who needs it. That could be a huge benefit for AI because you've got the possibility of a learning tool that could adapt to the user. You've got the possibility of perhaps using the camera on your phone to show a machine, and it would know then it looks like a Precore 800. Is that right? Speak now. Yes, it is right. And then it might say, well, tell me about the problem in just normal conversational English. Well,
Mhm.
the belt's not running. And you can see how all of that then connected with the information that we have at our fingertips could be incredibly powerful and could give massive steps at that sort of diagnosis end. But
Yeah,
then
I
ultimately,
agree.
you've got
Agree. And create training materials such as, I've always been baffled that in training, if we go for certification, did you go for certifications? With Matrix or whoever, did you go to
yeah,
their
yeah, I did it
classes?
with Matrix and Cybex
It
and
was always high
Neuron.
level, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And never really came down to some of the detail. And
yeah.
now it's not their job to teach you how to use a multimeter, but it should be our industry's job to put together training videos around how to use a multimeter for our products. Because if I go looking to learn about electrical for our industry, there's nothing there to talk about. that's any significance. I can find stuff in housing and commercial all day long, but I can't find things that explain how our industry works. That's where you have an advantage, right? Your mind works in a way that you already had A, B, and C, and that was good enough. And many of us get stuck at C, but you have the kind of mind that goes, oh, I can get to D, E, and maybe even F in the process because of my education, my experience, the way my brain works. And that's why we need better training materials. I'm with you. That's where AI can really pull some stuff together and teach us about how things are flowing through the system, and we have a better understanding of why the blue wire does this.
Yeah, that's right. And ultimately, we have to validate it as well, don't we? You know, the humans, me, you, people like us, need to be able to say, no, that's not right, or yes, that is right, and stop AI going in some kind of weird direction where it's, you know, because the if if we don't know, then we'll just believe whatever the AI tells us. And I think, you know, that's a role for NAHFTA. That's a role for the Gym Safety Council in
Yeah.
validating the information and saying, is this an authorized, approved source? You know, is this actually correct? What's being put out there in the marketplace?
Yeah, because I just want to be the best that I can at what I do.
Yeah, yeah,
It's that
yeah,
simple.
yeah.
Give me the
Yeah.
tools, teach me, and teach your own in-house staff, you know, because it's your in-house staff I'm talking about at a manufacturer. That's that's who I'm calling to rely on when I don't know exactly what I'm doing. Um, they should be the masters at what, and I will commend Octane. Was Octane popular in the UK?
I wouldn't say it was popular, no, but yeah, but it
Okay.
has a presence. Yeah,
It definitely became a staple because they had limited pieces, but they became a staple of having their limited pieces in a lot of facilities,
yeah, yeah.
because they're just a little different, right? And Octane's the perfect example of excellence in a lot of ways. When it comes to the service after the sale. Okay, so Octane was just Octane. Then they were sold to Schwinn Residential, which is Medicore or something like that.
Something
Got
like that. Yeah,
got
yeah.
driven into the ground, but still kept a lot of the same technicians. And the reason why they got driven in the ground is just they were cheapening. They went to go cheapen the hardware. They just reduced the quality of what was being used. Um, and then they got bought by True Fitness here in the US and regained quality. Again, went back to what they did. And the whole time I've talked to the same service technicians and they know exactly what's going on. And when I just have a simple question, I learn. But I
Yeah.
call all these other manufacturers and I often just don't learn.
They don't want to share. No, that's
I
right.
just don't learn anything. In fact, I'm usually guiding them to say yes to something so that I
Yeah,
can get what I want.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, I did have a
Yeah, I
guy
think
that
that's
teach me how many revolutions, and I got the theory on my phone saved. Um, he was actually at iFit on how to count how many revolutions tell you how fast the belt's actually moving, because a customer
yeah,
was complaining that it was going too small.
yeah,
I mean, too slow, and
yeah.
I still don't understand it. I need to actually, I would like to work out that theory, but he's like, yeah, you measure the size of the belt or the size of the deck or the length of the belt
Oh,
versus the size of the earth, how many rotations, and this, and it was like, oh my God, how,
brilliant. I can help you with that. Yeah, it's you don't need an app for that. But you're right. You know, it's if once you got the knowledge, it's straightforward. And I just don't understand why the manufacturers are so protective. I mean,
see, I'm going to
the company.
challenge you to release a document to share with the rest of the world that understands how to judge the actual speed of a walk belt
Yeah,
in a plain English form, uh, and it's just the simple formula of what it is. Because even though I wrote it down, I'm still baffled by it. And he
absolutely.
had a hard
Yeah,
time explaining it over the phone. I'm a visual person too, so that doesn't
yeah,
help. I
yeah,
need to see it written. and they need to go, okay, I measure this, I do this, and I do this. I don't always have to understand how it works. I just need to know that it does
So
work.
I'll send you some, Scott. I'll send you that information. I'll also send you the information on the lamp as well, so you can see that. And
That would be
um,
interesting to build. And
but
I
yeah,
will challenge you if you choose to build them. NAFTA is one of the things we really are going to launch with and is important to us is a
mm,
marketplace,
okay,
just like Facebook Marketplace, um, except for our industry, and we're hoping that people will start bringing in unique things to make each other better. And that's
yeah,
like a tool that I would love to see on there, that if it was a functional tool, or a representation of how to get it done. If it works here, right? I don't know what the difference would be in voltage and how that affects things.
yeah. It's a good point. I'll have
Interesting.
to think about that. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, interesting. Well, and I just learned too, I'm testing a Precore wire harness, right? So they use the RJ45 cables,
yeah.
and they're pain to test
They are.
with the
Yeah,
voltmeter. And and this is how slow I am. Um, I'm talking with my head of operations, Matt, and he's part of NAFTA as well. And I'm like, man, we got to build something to test these things. And as soon as I hung up with the phone with him, I go, wait, if I'm asking for it, it's got to exist.
yeah.
And all I did was I typed in how to test continuity and on a RJ45 cable, and suddenly, bing, 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 bing. And in a matter of going on Amazon, and 2 days later, I have a tester that I used for the first time the other day. And I'm going, why did I not
Why didn't
get
you know this?
this?
Yeah, exactly
Now
right.
the other thing is too is I need to call Precore because I'm pretty sure I was talking to a tech two, and they give us the best information. They're tier two techs, and I'm pretty sure one day I was working on a unit that was underpowering for some reason. And if that is a real thing, I just need to double check that. Um, I need to find a tester, which I have on Alibaba, that will tell me what the power is. So I think those testers are called a PoE, power on Ethernet, because I think is what it stands for. But this tester will tell me how much power is actually on it. And so that I
Right.
get it all in one versus just testing continuity. Um, but I go back to why isn't Precore telling us this exists for those of us who
Yeah,
don't live in this world, the world of IT?
yeah.
What is not talked about? Tools, simple tools. I can't believe I'm 15 years in and I'm just now figuring this out because I just used it for the first time yesterday. I'm mad.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. And you imagine, so whoever these people who are following in our footsteps, who are just like setting out now, we don't want it to be another 15 years before they discover this sort of stuff either. We
Yeah.
they need to be sort of discovering this in the first six to 12 months so that
Yeah.
they can then take it forward.
Literally, no one has ever told me that this exists. And I've struggled, literally taping the wire harness to something to keep it still and then
Yeah,
trying to hit it with my micro leads. Oh, just crazy. Anyhow,
yeah.
it is the industry that we live in, and I'm glad that you exist. I'm glad that you are doing what you're doing on the other side of the world from us. I believe that there is a long-term relationship or friendship that will happen through this. I'm hoping that over time, since you are starting on the uh, teaching side of things, that we will share what we are doing respectfully across, and make our industry better as a whole. Uh, uh, I welcome seeing you grow, and I hope that you know the UK understands that this is a value to them, that you do have purpose, um, that you don't find too many roadblocks in your
Mm.
way because we're going to
Yeah,
see roadblocks. You know, we've seen we but we I would encourage you if you're not doing this. I know what we did here, and we immediately started getting on the phone and talking with manufacturers because that's really where it was. And then we're blessed that I don't know. Have you seen the Facebook group Fix Your Gym?
No, not
Okay.
seen that one.
So our colleague in the industry, Adam Niffen, started a podcast called Fix Your Gym, but he's an owner like the rest of us and has had a hard time just keeping up with it. And finally, but he did start a Facebook group called Fix Your Gym. So that is a good community of us, at least here in the US. And we do have people from across the world in there as well. Mexico, I've talked to a couple of people from UK and stuff like that as well. So just look for that, and you'll find more of us. Um,
Good. Will do. Yeah.
and they're sharing good knowledge in there, and it's a good community, and I'm glad it exists. Um, so I think if you were to mix all three of us together, and I know that on Facebook there's other communities around treadmill, like a big treadmill repair and things like that, but they're more on like, they're not community based versus um, they look like more of people coming in to complain about their iFit or whatever other brand is out
Yeah.
there, mostly in residential. So, um,
Yeah.
all
I'll
right, well,
take a
good
look at
deal.
that.
So, people can find you. I guess is it easier to find you on your website? Um,
Uh, yeah, website or LinkedIn are they're the most effective ways, I think. Yeah. Yeah.
okay, so it's Jon Isaacs, um, and then the website's the same thing, right? JonIsaac.com.
It's charteredengineer.com, but to be honest, if you type in my name into Google, inevitably I'm on the page, the first page.
Okay,
So
I've
I'm
copied the links to things on the to get them to the council.
yeah.
We'll make sure that those get on in the description, things like that. Man, I appreciate you sitting down with me today. This has been fun, and I
That's
hope we'll
great.
get to do this again. Maybe we should schedule something for down the road to do a check-in on you and and whatnot. And obviously, if you need any help out of us, you need a sounding board um, based in just what's happening here. Um, please, obviously, you've been talking with Dan, and I think he's
Dan's been amazing. I've got to say, Scott, he's been so enthusiastic and so supportive.
oh yeah,
Uh,
he's our pit bull too. Um,
Brilliant.
he he
He
he
is, and
is he is a fighter. He
yeah,
has. I'm so glad that he ended up working with us because he wasn't a part of the original group, and some people fell out as they do, right? And that's going to happen. And he is amazing. He I think we are blessed as a whole. We as a group are very diversified in thought processes, and we allow each other to express those and challenge those in meetings, and it's really helped us um, uh, move forward pretty quickly. You know,
yeah.
now we are coming into basically 2 years, but we are just, I think we're just, I'm praying we are just weeks away to launching our website and starting our um, official memberships, outside of the free stuff that we've been doing. And we hope to also be at the HFA show again this year, which is what Ursa used to be. Um,
Oh yes, Dan mentioned about that. He sort of informally invited me over, but there's I looked into that. There's quite a cost. So on the
we'll
basis that
figure
I
it
don't have
out at
any
some
funds in
point.
place yet, I'm not sure I can do that. But
Yeah,
it would be
we will figure it out at some point in time to get
fantastic.
you over throughout the years. Yeah, this is not exactly been a cheap venture for any of us.
No, no, I can
We are
imagine.
putting in we started off with a reasonable amount of money that made sense, but suddenly we found that when trying to build this marketplace, we thought we were going to be able to do it with plugins, and no, not at all. And then
Yeah,
also the cost of the HFA show moves locations, moves cities, usually revolves between San Diego, LA, Vegas, and Orlando, so East Coast. Um, and San Diego this year is much more expensive. And
Right.
also, too,
Yeah.
we're growing, so we need a bigger room. And so that
Yeah.
gets expensive. And we're just flipping the bill,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. But it is what it is. That's
Well,
obviously
it's
business.
good that you guys are doing it. It's definitely got to be done.
Yeah.
And yeah, I completely respect what you're doing, and glad to be glad to be part of it, even albeit remotely.
Yeah.
It's good.
Well, John, thank you for your time today. We appreciate you.
Yeah, you too. Thanks a lot, Scott. And yep, stay in touch. I'll send you some information like I promised. So look out
Sure.
for that over the course of the next 2 or 3 days, and then hopefully catch up with you in due course.
That sounds good. Lastly, I want to ask you something since because you were close to Birmingham. Did you go to the last Aussie show?
Ah, no, because I couldn't afford a ticket at £2,500.
Are you serious? The average
Yes.
ticket was two and a
Well,
half.
I'm sure if you remember perhaps of the Black Sabbath fan club, maybe you'd have got an opportunity to get one. I'm not saying they were all £2,500, but unfortunately for the likes of me, who I wasn't there at sort of 8 a.m. on the morning of the launch of the tickets to the public. I kind of came in later on that day. By then,
Hmm.
it was £2,500. I
Wow.
thought that's much for me.
You know,
But I understand it was a spectacular concert, and everyone. I've seen an awful lot of people with the t-shirts. Whether they actually went or not, I don't know. But all the way through the rest of the summer, I was very aware of seeing people with Ozzy Osbourne and the Black Sabbath t-shirts and the last concert and all this. Yeah,
what a
it's quite a
crazy
privilege.
thing that this big concert happens, and a couple weeks later you pass.
Yeah,
Um, what's interesting is when he passed, we had billboards up across the United States that went up on digital billboards, um, with people expressing their 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 mourning of him. And it's amazing that someone who has his checkered past the way it is, right? And then being on TV and the chaos of his family, and whatnot, can go out the beloved chaotic hero that he is.
exactly. How does that even work in any
But
kind of
that just
rational
says
way?
that there's redemption for everybody.
It does, doesn't it?
You
I'll
know,
tell you what, Scott. I was fortunate enough to be in Birmingham on that evening. I was due to meet somebody, and uh, so I was in Birmingham, and it it was flashed. So this would be about 7 o'clock on the Tuesday, if I remember right, and it was flashed on the screens in the pub where I was waiting to having a drink. And a bit later on that evening, after I'd had my meeting and went, it's been like an hour later. Um, I'm fortunate enough to be. I was right in the centre. And we've got a big mechanical bull which was used in the Commonwealth Games, which was a big thing in 2022. And there, this thing's been installed in the train station right in the centre of Birmingham, and it's called Ozzy the Bull. Ozzy after Ozzy Osbourne, because that he obviously came from Birmingham. And there's also a bench by a bridge which is known as the Black Sabbath Bridge, and
I saw, yeah, there was
and
a lot of pictures
both
of
of these
that.
places became a kind of impromptu shrines in
Mhm.
the sort of week or 2 weeks after his passing. And I went to the bull, and this would be like an hour after it was announced, probably, and there was just a single red rose positioned
Mm.
underneath this bull. This bull's a massive. It's a massive thing. It's huge. Um, when I went there on the way to work the following morning, 12 hours later, they got security around it. There was a mass of flowers, but it was quite poignant seeing that one,
I
just at that
bet.
moment in time, just that one rose, just by this massive thing, just in that moment. It was really quite special.
I
Uh,
bet it was. Did you take a picture? Did you think to?
uh, I think I might have done. I can't remember now. I think I did. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I probably would have definitely shared a tear over the one rose versus the thousands.
yeah, yeah.
I think that's more poignant. Um, wow.
But Yeah.
Crazy times, man.
Well,
We're just getting older, you know, we're losing all of our icons slowly but
very true.
surely,
Very
you
true.
know. It is what it is. Well,
Scott, it's you and I who are becoming the icons now. That's the way we need to look at it.
man, and, you know, and I have been through my fair share of stuff too. Um, you know, I didn't get my life together until I hit my in my 30s.
Yeah.
And I was a train wreck going down the road. Um, but I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to help and share and do what I can. And you know, I don't get things right all the time, um, but I try to do my best. You know, and in you know in other communities, raising kids, things like that. You know, so yeah. I don't know if I'm an icon, but I've definitely lived in what they call the dash between the first day and the last day, you
Right.
know, on my tombstone. So, you know,
Yeah.
I'll take it. But
Good.
I'm glad I didn't live as crazy as Ozzy did.
Oh yeah. 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 He did well to get to whatever age he was. Was he 80? I can't remember, but he did very well, didn't he?
Yeah, he was coming up on 80, I think.
Definitely way to
Um,
go out as well.
yeah. The only thing I wish when I'm thinking about Ozzy is that he didn't let his wife talk him into plastic surgery. Because there at the end, he's completely pulled back.
Yeah.
It just did not look right, but whatever. All right, John, I'm gonna
Very
let you
good.
go. Thank you for your
Thank you,
time
Scott.
today.
You too. Enjoy the
Yep.
rest of the day.
All right, you too, sir. We'll talk soon.
Bye bye.